You really live like this every day? That question, those exact words, cut through the quiet like a knife. Kira stood in the middle of our modest living room, eyes scanning the space like she was walking through a secondhand store. Her voice carried that unmistakable tone. Not curiosity, not concern, just pure, unfiltered judgment. I blinked, trying not to show how much it stung. "What do you mean?" I asked, my tone sharper than I meant. But I couldn't help it. Kira had a way of burrowing under my skin, turning comfort into discomfort faster than anyone I'd ever met. She waved her hand like she was swatting a fly. "This whole minimalist thing you've got going on." Then she plopped down on our worn-in sofa. That sofa. The one Eli and I spent months saving for. The one where we had our quiet morning coffees, late-night talks, and plans for our baby. That sofa held memories. But to Kira, it was just something ugly to sit on. Eli reached out and gently touched my arm. "Kira, we like our home just the way it is," he said with that soft, measured voice he always used when talking to her, like she was a wild animal who might bolt or bite if startled. "It suits our needs perfectly," he added. I swallowed the response I really wanted to give. Something about how our home was full of love, not labels. But I didn't say it. Not then. I didn't want to cause a scene. Kira shrugged. "If you say so." Then, without asking, she picked up the remote and started flipping through our channels, like it was her place, like she lived here. Eli gave me that look, the one that said, "Please, just let it go." And I did. I excused myself, smiled through clenched teeth, and walked back to the bedroom. The door clicked shut behind me, but the tension followed me in like a shadow. I sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing my hands over my belly, feeling our baby kick softly. This was supposed to be a time of joy, a season of new beginnings. But with every visit, Kira brought a storm, and I was growing tired of trying to weather it in silence. Her appearances became more frequent, almost as if she had some kind of internal radar that beeped every time Eli and I reached a new milestone. Each time she arrived, she brought with her an air of disruption, of dominance, like she was asserting her place at the center of our world, even if it meant pushing me to the sidelines. I remember one afternoon, just as I had settled in for a nap. My feet were swollen, my back aching, and my body begging for rest. The door burst open, and there she was, standing in the doorway like she owned the place. "Oh good, you're home," she chirped. I was worried I'd missed the big event. "What are you talking about, Kira?" I asked, instantly alert and anxious. "The baby shower, obviously," she said, like I'd lost my mind. "I assumed you'd be having one by now." I stared at her, stunned. "Eli and I decided not to have one. We want to keep things low-key." Kira gasped, like I'd told her I didn't believe in birthdays. "Low-key? Jada, this is a baby we're talking about. This is supposed to be a celebration. You need gifts, decorations, excitement." I opened my mouth, but Eli walked into the room, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Kira, what a nice surprise," he said with a weary smile. He always tried to be the peacemaker, even when it drained him. "She's not having a baby shower," Kira told him, like she was delivering news of a national crisis. "We talked about it," Eli said gently, "and we're happy with our decision." "Happy?" Kira scoffed. "You two have never done anything except live small. It's no wonder you're so unprepared." That one hit me hard. I looked at Eli, begging with my eyes for him to say something, anything, that would remind her whose home this was, whose child this was. But he just gave me the same look he always did, the one that said, "It's not worth it." And I died a little inside. The couch, the baby shower, the comments about our choices. None of it seemed like much in isolation. But over time, each moment added up. And what should have been a peaceful pregnancy felt like a battle for space, for respect, for basic dignity. Kira wasn't just visiting our home. She was rearranging it, physically and emotionally, making herself comfortable while pushing me out. And Eli? He stayed neutral, always neutral. But neutrality isn't peace. Sometimes it's just permission. Morning sickness had taken over my days like an unwelcome guest. There were hours I couldn't lift my head without feeling like the world was spinning, and other moments when I'd lie on the couch and pray for 5 minutes of stillness. It was one of those mornings. I was curled under a blanket, eyes shut, trying to ride out a wave of nausea when the doorbell rang. And I knew. Even before Eli called out from the kitchen, I already knew. "Kira's here," he said, like someone announcing a storm was approaching. I didn't move. I just called out, "Tell her I'm not feeling well." But of course she didn't care. A moment later, I heard the clack of her heels, the swoosh of her handbag hitting the floor. "Jada, still curled up on that couch?" she asked, her voice practically humming with judgment. "You're not even pretending to try anymore." I kept my eyes closed, holding on to the last shred of calm I had left. "Jada's not feeling well today," Eli said, stepping in to defend me, or at least trying to. "She needs rest." Kira waved him off. "Nonsense, I'm here now. She could use the company. Sitting around feeling sorry for herself all day isn't going to help anyone." She plopped down beside me. Her perfume overwhelmed the air around me, strong and intrusive. Her words were sharper than ever. "I never had morning sickness when I was pregnant," she continued, adjusting a cushion like she was settling in for a cozy chat. "Then again, I actually took care of myself." "That was it." "Kira," I said, turning to face her, my voice raw with frustration. "I'm not in the mood for your criticisms today. If you can't be supportive, I'd rather you leave." Silence fell, thick, awkward. She narrowed her eyes, her lips pressed together in a tight, angry line. "Well, I never—" "She's right," Eli cut in, surprising us both. "She needs rest, Kira. Please, it's best if you go." For a moment, I actually believed he was standing up for me. That maybe, just maybe, he was finally seeing what I had seen all along. But then I looked at him. His face wasn't firm with conviction. It was weary, tired, caught in the middle. Kira stood abruptly. "Fine, but don't expect me to be so accommodating next time." With that, she was gone. The door slammed and the house fell back into silence. I looked at Eli, searching his face for something, anything that said, "I'm choosing you." But I didn't see it. What I saw was a man torn between two women, his sister and his wife. And in that moment, it hit me like a punch to the chest. He hadn't chosen me. Not really. He'd done just enough to keep the peace. And peacekeeping without protection is just passivity. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, one hand on my belly, the other under my head, staring at the ceiling. The same questions ran through my mind over and over again. How much longer can I do this? What if nothing ever changes? What happens when the baby comes and Kira's still here? By morning, I had my answer. The voicemail from her was the final push. She sounded chipper, like everything was fine. She announced she'd be stopping by later that day to check in. That's when something inside me snapped. I stood in the middle of our kitchen and looked around, not at the furniture or the dishes. I looked at the space that used to feel safe, the space I had built with Eli, the space that now felt invaded, polluted, dominated by someone who had no right to be here. I began emptying the cabinets, the fridge, the pantry. I didn't stop to think, I just moved. Then I packed a bag. Clothes, toothbrush, prenatal vitamins, a journal. Eli walked in just as I was zipping it shut. "Jada?" he asked, brow furrowed. "What's going on?" I looked at him, calm but firm. "I'm going to stay with my parents for a while." His eyes widened. "What? Why? What happened?" I held my gaze steady. "You don't see it. You don't hear it. You don't feel what I feel every time she walks in this house and makes it hers." "Jada, I've been trying—" "No," I said, shaking my head. "You've been avoiding. You've been pacifying. You've been watching this happen like it's a TV show you can't pause." I just didn't want to cause a scene." "You didn't want to cause a scene," I repeated, "but she causes one every time she opens her mouth." He tried to take my hand. I stepped back. "I need space, Eli, real space. Until you can see what I see and actually do something about it, I can't be here." I walked out, my bag slung over my shoulder, my heart pounding in my chest. But I didn't look back, because for the first time in months, I was choosing me. The car ride to my parents' house was quiet. My dad drove while my mom sat beside him, occasionally glancing back at me in the rearview mirror. No one said much. We didn't need to. They already knew. By the time we pulled into their driveway, a strange sense of calm washed over me. The kind you feel when you know you've made the right decision, even if it hurts. My childhood home looked the same. The ivy on the porch railings, the wind chime near the front door, the faint scent of lavender from Mom's garden. This was what peace felt like, and I had missed it more than I realized. "Are you sure about this, Jada?" Mom asked gently as she helped me carry my bag inside. I nodded. "I can't keep living like that, Mom. Kira's behavior has gone from irritating to unbearable, and Eli, he just stood there every time." My dad's jaw tightened. "That sister of his has always been a piece of work," he muttered. "I never understood why Eli let her run his life like that." "He doesn't see it," I said, "or maybe he chooses not to. Either way, I had to get out." They didn't argue. They just helped me settle into my old room and made me a cup of peppermint tea. That night, for the first time in what felt like forever, I slept. Really slept. No stress dreams, no tossing and turning, just rest. In the days that followed, I started to feel like myself again. My nausea lessened. I walked in the garden. I journaled. I made a list of the things I wanted for the baby, not from a store, but from life. Peace, respect, protection, love. And I realized I couldn't offer those things to my child unless I demanded them for myself first. Then one evening, my mom came into the living room holding her phone. "It's Eli," she said. "He left a message, said he wants to talk." I took a deep breath and nodded. "Let him come." Meanwhile, back at the house, Eli was starting to feel the shift, the silence, the absence. Kira showed up a few days after I left, as if nothing had happened. She rang the doorbell again and again until Eli reluctantly answered. "There you are," she huffed, breezing past him into the living room. "I've been texting. What's going on? Where's Jada?" Eli closed the door slowly. "She's staying with her parents." Kira blinked. "What? Why?" "She needed space." Kira scoffed, tossing her bag onto the couch. "From what? That tiny little house? Honestly, she's always been so dramatic." That's when something inside Eli cracked. "No," he said quietly. "She needed space from you." The room froze. Kira narrowed her eyes. "Excuse me?" Eli took a deep breath. "You've been showing up unannounced, criticizing everything, making her feel like a stranger in her own home. You crossed every boundary she had, and I let you. That's on me." "You can't be serious," Kira snapped. "I'm family." "And that doesn't give you the right to be disrespectful," he said, firmer now. "She's my wife. She's pregnant. She needed support, and I failed her." Failed. Kira stood up, glaring. "So now this is all my fault?" "I'm not saying it's all your fault," Eli said, "but I am saying you're a big part of the problem. And if you can't respect our space, you can't be a part of our lives." The words were out, and they hung there, sharp and final. Kira's face flushed red. "You'll regret this." "I already regret not doing it sooner." She stormed out, and Eli stood there, alone. The house that had once been filled with noise and arguments now sat in stillness. For the first time in years, he heard the silence, and it told him everything he needed to know. When he finally showed up at my parents' house, I was sitting on the front steps, rubbing my belly. He looked different, older, more tired, but also clearer. "Hey," he said softly. I nodded. "Hey." He sat beside me. For a long time we didn't speak. Then he said, "I told her. I told Kira everything, and I told her she's not welcome if she can't respect you or our home." I didn't react, I just waited. "I should have done it a long time ago," he continued. "You were right. I kept the peace with her at the expense of the peace in our marriage, and I'm sorry." I looked at him then, really looked at him. "I wanted you to protect us, Eli, and when you didn't, I had to." "I know," he whispered. "I can't come back just because you finally said the right things," I added. "I need to see it, feel it. I need to believe that I can walk back into that house and never feel like a guest again." "You will," he said. "I'll make sure of it." I believed that he meant it, but meaning it wasn't enough. He had to prove it. Moving day came faster than I thought it would. Eli had found us a new place. Quiet neighborhood, cozy porch, more light than our last home, and most importantly, fresh energy, a true reset. He didn't pick it out on his own. He showed me pictures, asked questions, took my preferences seriously. It was the first time in a long time I felt like my opinion mattered in something that directly affected me. As the moving truck rolled up the street, I stood by the front door holding my belly, feeling the baby stir. A little flutter, like a nudge of encouragement. "You ready?" Eli asked, squeezing my hand. I looked at him, not just at his face, but at his energy. There was no hesitation in his voice, no apology in his stance, just quiet certainty. "I'm ready," I said. The movers started unloading boxes. Eli and I walked through the house together, placing things in rooms that hadn't yet absorbed the noise of conflict. The air felt new, the walls untouched by old arguments or resentment. We were settling in when it happened. Heels on pavement. That voice. Well, what do we have here?" Kira called from the sidewalk, like she had never stormed off, like she had every right to reappear whenever she pleased. I froze. Eli turned slowly. "What are you doing here?" he asked, voice calm but cold. Kira walked up the driveway like she owned it. "I heard you moved. Thought I'd swing by and see the place. I'm family." Eli shook his head. "No, not anymore, Kira. Not like this." She blinked. "Excuse me?" "You don't get to just show up," he said, standing tall between her and the front door. "You've disrespected Jada for years, and I let it happen, but that stops now." She scoffed. "This again? Seriously? I was just trying to help. You both overreacted." I stepped forward. I wasn't hiding anymore. You called our home a dump. You mocked our choices. You insulted me while I was carrying your niece or nephew. Kira rolled her eyes. You're too sensitive, Jada. Everything's always about you. I smiled, a calm, even smile. No, not everything, but this is. I took Eli's hand. This is our home, our life, our family. And if you can't come here with respect, love, and humility, you can't come here at all. She stood there, stunned. And for the first time, she had nothing to say. Well, she muttered, you'll be sorry when you realize how much you need me. I tilted my head. If that day ever comes, it won't be today. With a huff, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the sidewalk like a last tantrum. Eli and I stood there together, letting her footsteps fade. And when the silence returned, it felt sacred. He turned to me. You okay? I nodded. I think I've never been better. We walked back into the house, closing the door behind us. The baby kicked again, almost like it knew something important had just happened. The rooms were still bare, the furniture still out of place, but it already felt like home. A few weeks passed. We unpacked, nested, talked more, laughed more. We were no longer surviving. We were building. One day, Eli came into the living room holding 2 mugs of tea. He sat beside me and said, "Thank you." "For what?" I asked. "For leaving," he said. It woke me up. I thought I was protecting everyone by staying silent. But all I was doing was letting her hurt you while I stood by. I took the tea and nodded. Sometimes love looks like distance, and sometimes it looks like drawing a line in the sand. He reached for my hand. I won't make that mistake again. And I believed him. Not because he said it, but because I'd watched him prove it, every day. By standing up, by listening, by letting me lead when I needed to, by building a new home, not just for me, but with me. Our baby came not long after that, a beautiful, healthy girl. We named her Nova, because after everything we'd been through, she felt like a new star in our sky. Kira sent a gift a few months later, a pink onesie and a short note. No apology, no real warmth, just an obligatory gesture. We didn't respond, because some doors, once closed, don't need to be reopened. Some peace is too hard won to risk again. And as I rocked Nova in the soft afternoon light, I whispered to her, "You'll grow up in a home where love means boundaries, where quiet isn't weakness, where your mama knows how to stand tall." She blinked up at me with her wide, curious eyes. And I knew everything that had happened. Every confrontation, every heartbreak, every bold step away from what hurt me. It was all worth it. We were free.